Hi, welcome to Super Awesome Film Club, episode 39. My name is Adelaide Blair, and I will be your host. And our guest, our panelist, our lone panelist tonight is Blair-Freese. Hi, Io.
Hey.
Io and I are doing a series on mother and daughter films, and tonight we are talking about Terms of Endearment. And if you didn't know, we are mother and daughter, so we thought we would kind of explore that through film.
I'm the mother.
Yeah. No, she's not. I had to pay to be the mother. I'm going to be the mother. Okay, Terms of Endearment from 1983. It's directed by James L. Brooks. It stars Shirley MacLaine as Aurora Greenway, Deborah Winger as her daughter Emma, Jack Nicholson as Garrett Breedlove, and Jeff Daniels as Flat Horton. Okay, so it starts out at the beginning when Emma is born, and Aurora seems to be a somewhat paranoid mom in that one of my favorite scenes out of any movie ever, because it really hits home personally with me as a mom, is as the baby's asleep in her crib, Aurora can't hear her breathing, so she goes in there and listens and then pokes and prods and then practically crawls in the crib with her.
She tries.
Then wakes the baby up just to make sure she's still alive. And I have never done that as a parent. Anyway.
I remember waking up as a child with my mom, and not even a child, as like a teenager, with my mom hovering over me with her finger under my nose to check if I'm still breathing. Never happened.
No, it never happened. Anyway, that wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, so Aurora's a little bit of a paranoid mother, and her husband dies, and she ends up raising Emma on her own. She's got several suitors, but she doesn't put out. She just likes to surround herself by men who like to dote on her. And it goes pretty quickly through Emma's childhood. And then Emma is engaged to be married to Flat Horton, an aspiring writer, and he's a professor. And Aurora does not approve of this because basically she thinks Flap's kind of a waste. And so she tells her daughter this and is just like, yeah, I'm not really going to go to your wedding. So that kind of sets the whole tone of the movie, in that Aurora and Emma are very close, but they're very crazy. They both have issues. And so basically it's the story of their life together as a mother and daughter. They both go through a lot of different stages. Emma has children. She has an affair. She and Flap kind of split up, but then they're kind of brought back together because Emma, spoiler, gets cancer and dies. Aurora, on the other hand, has to live with Emma being in a different state, but they talk on the phone all the time. She herself goes through a sexual renaissance by hooking up with the astronaut next door, played by Jack Nicholson. And then she has to deal with the illness and sickness and death of her daughter. And that's about it. Io, what did you think of this movie?
So when I heard that we were going to be watching Terms of Endearment, I thought, oh great, we're going to watch a film with a lot of false sentimentality, and I'm going to hate it. And this was only worsened by the fact that before watching this movie, when we were hanging out with your friend, she and you were talking about how I don't ever cry at movies and how I'm probably going to hate this movie because I'm cold and heartless. I am not cold and heartless, and I did cry at the end of this movie, probably for the last 5 minutes, pretty consistently, like maybe a tear every minute. So that says something. That says something. I think where this movie really succeeds is in the characters. I think that the characters are all, I mean, they're all not what you're used to seeing in films. Like, when you think of film, you know, like mother-daughter films or films that are supposed to be kind of about relationships and about people, they're usually pretty two-dimensional. Mm-hmm. The characters in this movie are incredibly three-dimensional, and the only character that I think has any failings is Jack Nicholson's character, because it's pretty much just Jack Nicholson. It's a dick, and he's playing the character of kind of an asshole, and I believe that Jack Nicholson is probably kind of an asshole. So it fits so well that it doesn't have a lot to it.
So, this is one of the few. So I'm not a big Nicholson fan. I can appreciate him. You know, The Shining's really good. Blah blah blah. But this is one of the few times I actually like him.
I mean, he has some redeeming parts about him, but it's so funny.
So if you haven't seen the movie, he's an astronaut who's kind of a drunk and a womanizer, and has difficulty connecting emotionally.
He does at the very end, you know, like come show some better parts of his personality, but there's always that underlying kind of same characteristics of him being a womanizer. For instance, when Aurora tells him that she loves him, his response is like, well, do you want my stock answer? I love you too, kid. And it's like, you know, like, he's playing just this obvious role, which is probably quite similar to how he is in real life. I don't know. I'm not going to make any speculations there. But I think that the rest of the characters are all just incredibly rich. Actually, one of my favorite characters in this is Flap, not because he's particularly likable, but because he grows as a character and yet is stunted by his own flaws. And it's very fun to watch him kind of weave through life and change and grow, but also have like some very definite personality like characteristics and flaws. I think that it's, so we already spoiled it. She dies at the end. I think that the way that they play through the death is really great. James L. Brooks is a funny guy, and everybody knows that. But this movie is actually really funny, and I think some of the funniest parts come from Emma on her deathbed. Mm-hmm. Like when she's saying goodbye to her kids, you know, like my eyes started welling up, and I was like, just tell your mom that you love her. And, you know, as her youngest son is walking away, she's like, I think that went really well. I think that went well. And she's like crying, and you're crying, and you're laughing. And I think that's one of the really cool things about the way that this movie is written is it's really funny throughout, and for being such a heavy movie, you have a lot of fun with watching it. One of the things that I also noted about the movie that we watched last time was that I didn't like the way that they moved through time, because it happened over a really long period of time. Yeah, Mommy Dearest, it happened pretty much through the whole life of the daughter, which happened, you know, same kind of timeline in this movie. But this movie did it a lot better. Like I was wondering, like, well, how could you actually have it so it feels a lot more natural? But this movie does feel a lot more natural in that all of the scenes seem to actually make sense. Like there's nothing that seems too much in this movie. Nothing is in there needlessly. And I also, I guess one last point, I think it's really interesting. So both Emma and Flap have affairs. Flap's is pretty, I mean, it comes out, it's pretty obvious, even though Emma has hers, or at least it's revealed to you that she has hers first. She never comes forward and talks about it. And I think like as a movie, it creates so much realism when you see her on her deathbed and Flap's like, oh, you know, I'm so sorry about the affair, blah, blah, blah. And she's just like, he says like, I would never, or I know you would never do something like that or something like that.
But she's like, oh, yo, let's let it go. We're not.
Yeah.
No, it's okay, hon.
It makes it so like real because you know her shortcomings and her faults, and their relationship just becomes that much more charming, even though it's based around some really quite tragic events. And I don't know, I would recommend watching it, even though it is a movie that's completely based on, you know, people's relationships and sad stuff.
It's a good movie, and not only. Oh, can I go now?
Yes.
So it is a woman's picture, which, you know, they'd made a lot of those in like the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. They went out a little bit in the 60s and 70s, and they really don't make them that much anymore. And, you know, you can look at Mildred Pierce, which we watched, as being a kind of combination between a woman's picture and a film noir. And it's a genre that I wish they made more of, you know, just a movie that's just about women's lives and the things that happen. You know, it's not It's not anything more than that, but it's just such a funny story. And a woman's picture, when done right, can really just be this good. Like, I mean, it's just about the lives of two women, but it's really genuinely touching. Like, I hate false sentimentality, but there's none of that here.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he's works as generous with his characters. And I don't think I've ever seen Shirley MacLaine better in any role. I mean, she's just so bizarre and so loving, and just so, she encapsulates this person who is very complicated, who is prickly and opinionated and fussy. But
I love the way she treats Jack Nicholson. I think that some of the most charming relational lines in that are between them two.
yeah, and she, you know, she falls for him, and she knows it's stupid, and yet she always holds him accountable too in the relationship. She's just like, you're gonna miss me, dude. You know, like she goes after what she wants. Like he approaches her, she rebuffs him, and then several years later, she comes back to him and goes, yeah, let's go have lunch. And, you know, she's a really complicated person who's very true to herself, and is willing to explore things. You know, it took her a while to get her sexuality on, but once she got there, it was just like, wow, this is great. Another, you know, one of the things I also liked about this is, I can't remember her name, but Emma has like a best friend and a lifelong best friend, and they show that relationship. You know, they can't, you know, women usually have more than one friend and stuff, but, you know, even to show a woman's friendship as being equally important in her life as that of her mother and her husband is pretty rare. And so I really like that. The scene with the meds when she's in the hospital and it's 10 o'clock. There's two scenes in this movie that have stuck with me all the years after I've seen it. One is at the beginning when when Aurora's checking on the baby. And the other one is at the end of her daughter's life when it's time for her medication. And the nurse is like, yeah, I'll get to it. And she's like, no. She throws a huge fit about how her daughter is in pain and she needs her medication. And in some ways, I felt they soft pedaled the dying of cancer just a little bit, because it's usually a lot worse than that in many instances. But that particular scene really encompasses a lot about being a mother and not wanting to see your child in pain. So what did you think about their relationship? I felt it was really true about.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like, it's an interesting, because they're both such interesting characters, that it's a really kind of interesting dynamic that they have, where Shirley MacLaine's like incredibly controlling, and you can tell like Emma grows through the movie. Like when she's younger, she seems to kind of just like, okay, whatever, mom. When she, my mom.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, no, I think it's because it's funny because, you know, in the beginning, she just kind of goes along with Shirley, you know, with Aurora's kind of controlling nature, but then she transitions into kind of more, it's more of a compatible relationship where she just goes like, yeah, it's my mom, she's that way. But, you know, I wish I had a mom that people wanted to say goodbye to, but for the most part, she's just kind of flippant about it because she accepts her mom for who she is. And it's funny because, you know, Aurora is a little naggy at Emma sometimes, especially with her relationship with Flap, but she also really respects her daughter for who she is. And I think that part of the relationship is really true. Like, I know I grew up with a mother and you're not particularly controlling in the way that Aurora is by any means. But as you grow from childhood to adulthood with having a really strong relationship with one of your parents, whether it be, you know, your mother or your father, the relationship blossoms into something where it's no longer like I'm constantly being berated with all of these instructions and rules and stuff into, whatever, mom, you know, like that's just my mom. That's just who she is. And so that part of their relationship I thought was very genuine and kind of hit a spot for me. And it's also just really interesting because we talk a lot and they talk a lot. And I know that that's not a normal family, like mother-daughter dynamic, but it is true for me. And so it was kind of validating to see like, oh yeah, it's totally cool to have your mom call you every night.
Yeah, I mean, our relationship is not like theirs, and our relationship is very much like theirs.
Yeah.
And, you know, two very distinct people, strong people, just trying to navigate having an adult relationship and, you know, just making allowances for each other, and both of us being crazy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely nuts.
Yeah, and it's different because I remember watching it when I was your age, and then watching it now as an adult, and just each time I've watched it, you know, I've been at a different place in my life, and each time it has really resonated with me, but in a completely different way. Like now I much more resonate with Aurora, and her story is, and her journey as a mother is much more important to me than that of Emma. But when I was younger, Emma's story was the focus for me. So I think there's a lot in this movie. Oh, so let me read to you some of the titles of movies that came out in 1983. Return of the Jedi, Vacation, Flashdance, War Games, Trading Places, Videodrome, Valley Girl, Something Wicked This Way Comes, Risky Business, Twilight Zone, Big Chill, The Right Stuff, A Christmas Story, Silkwood, Strange Brew, and Sleepaway Camp. What a freaking great year for movies.
Yeah, I was about to say you own most of those.
Yes. But was a pretty amazing year for movies, and I think that this movie is up there at the top.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. And if you like other James L. Brooks movies, and I'm specifically recommending this to you, I think you would really like Broadcast News.
Okay.
I think you should check it out. I think there's a lot in it that is in this that you would enjoy. Okay, well, thank you guys for watching. We will be back in a couple weeks. We've yet to pick out our movie, so we're going on a road trip together so we can squabble about it the entire time. So, thanks for joining us, and watch the skies, everybody.
Have a good one.